Good morning to you. Mark Sutter with HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for the 5th of October 2012. I want to start off looking at climatology, and this is a good guide sometimes as to where we may be heading for the rest of the season. The peak of the season was around September the 10th, even though we really didn't have much activity, at least hurricane activity at that point in the year. Normally we see this big ramp up, and then it comes down, but then there's this secondary peak towards the latter part of October, the mid to latter part of October, and right now we're sitting at about right here, but we're headed towards this secondary peak just before the 20th of October, and I think this year it might not be too far off the mark, and I'll show you why as I go through this morning's slides. Now, looking at this on a map, this is the distribution of all the points of origin for the first 10 days of the month. And you can tell there's a really big clustering of development right here in the Western Caribbean and the southeast Bay of Campeche. Yes, there's still some fairly prolific development over the last 100 years in the Atlantic, the tropical Atlantic as it were, but the main emphasis will start to be on this region right here, especially the farther into the month we go. So the deeper into October we get, the more the chances go up that we will see something develop in these areas here, and that's already pretty close to land and somebody could get impacted, so we'll be watching to see what indeed happens. Right now the current satellite picture, very large ocean storm sitting up here near the vicinity of where Nadine was. It was absorbed into that storm system, finally off the maps. Now we have Oscar sitting out here, sheared, disorganized, obviously of no concern to anybody except shipping interests. In fact, this whole portion of the Atlantic pretty unsettled with this large storm system. Then we have a weak disturbance kind of rotating around to the southwest here, a different kind of track. Normally we see storm systems take off to the northeast. This will drift down towards the Bahamas, the southeast Bahamas, Turks, Caicos, and eventually Hispaniola, maybe southeast Cuba. Not really much consequence from it, just some clouds and occasional squally weather. Then we have our draped, stalled out frontal boundary leaning across the Gulf of Mexico and portions of the southeast. Don't really see anything coming out of this. Sometimes they can be a focusing mechanism for tropical cyclone development, but I don't see anything in the global models to indicate that this time around. Here's Oscar out here, weak, and probably an advisory or two left, and then that'll be the end of it. Maybe another day or so. And then here's this little disturbance trying to come around and maybe bring some squally weather to portions, a very small area of the southwest Atlantic basin. Here is Oscar on the tracking map. Won't live nearly as long as Nadine, not by a long shot, and it'll be gone. And then maybe the tracking map will be blank for a while. It has been since August the 1st. Ever since that day, there has always been something to track continuously every day. So it's like 66, 67 days, something like that. The rest of the season, we do have a lot of ocean heat content left in the Atlantic Basin, with the highest concentration of it over here in the Western Caribbean and in the vicinity of the Greater Antilles. So that's why I think, coupled with a favorable MJO pattern coming through, this is the ECMWF version of the MJO forecast, and you can see it is forecasting the MJO to come into phase 1 here, and some of the, if you just follow this logically along, you would think it would get over into phase 2. Now let me point out that when we had Isaac, the MJO came around and it was kind of weak. It was down here. The closer to the circle you get, the weaker the signature of the MJO. The Euro here forecasting a fairly significant MJO pulse, and you can see some of the spread in the guidance here leaning towards a fairly amplified MJO pulse if you just extrapolate it out into time, coming around for the Western Hemisphere, and this is the area that we really start to watch when it gets into for possible development down here in the Caribbean Sea. Now there's nothing in the offing for the next several days, but once we get past about October the 15th or so, I think that this is the region that we'll see something develop, and it could certainly impact land because you've already got close proximity to such areas. Cuba, Jamaica, the Antilles Islands, and certainly Central America here. But nothing right now. In fact, this is the GFS valid tonight. This weak little low pressure area, as I mentioned, rotating to the southwest, coming down out of the subtropics here, maybe bringing some showers and random thunderstorms to the greater Antilles, southeast Bahamas. That's about it. 48 hours out, you can see that weak disturbance sitting in here. Little change in the wind flow down there. It's a little surface trough, weak low pressure. Just something to keep an eye on, especially if you have small craft boating interest in the region. And then finally at 72 hours on Columbus Day, it is pretty much gone. Just a overall weak little area of low pressure and surface trough in the region. We'll wait and see if we get systems like this that end up in the Western Caribbean and they fester for a time. Then you can start to see development. But no such thing in the global models for the next several days. So the weekend ahead looks really nice, which is good. All right, so there you go. You are caught up now for the tropics, and no worries out there at all. And maybe the Hurricane Center, after Oscar, can't say it, goes away, that they can have a break and stop having to write advisories every day for 66, 67 days straight. It's ridiculous. At least we haven't had too many major impacts to land areas. No major hurricanes, that's for sure, although Isaac was certainly significant of an impact where it made landfall. But nothing, the likes of 04, 05, or 08, which is great news. All right, I'll be back again over the weekend with additional video blogs for you. Again, Mark Sudduth here, HurricaneTrack.com, my website. Always a pleasure to produce these videos for Hurricane and Hurricane HD. I'll have more over the weekend.